Welcome back to another educational video. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I'm really excited to teach you the power of networking and why it is crucial to survive in today's society when it comes to either career development or creating your own career through building a community around a hobby that you love and then monetizing it. So, a quick overview of what we're going to cover today, starting with defining what networking even is, three applications of networking, and then we'll go into a deeper analysis of all three applications, including thank you cards, reaching out on LinkedIn, and then also in person meetings. So, why are we even defining networking to begin with? That's a really great question. And so, before we launch ourselves into the definition mentioned on this slide, why am I even talking about this? That's a great question. So, for those of you who are new, or those of you who have been following this YouTube channel, The Life with Nate, to a certain extent, you'll notice that I talk about a lot of different things. So, like, for example, I'm interested in travel, I'm interested in fitness, I'm interested in career development. I also have a playlist on evergreen skills. And so, one of the things that I want to teach my audience is the ability to build a community around a hobby that they enjoy, but then also monetize it down the road as well. And so currently I'm doing that right now with my other creative project called Embassy Life in DC, which is a project that summarizes international embassy and cultural events in the DC area. And the monetization aspect is often the most difficult to do. And I have done that to a certain extent minorly. I don't have a full-time income from it, just as a caveat, but I am building it, which requires time. But anything good does. So the whole concept of evergreen skills is what I cover when it comes to building a foundation to allow you to build a community in the first place, which essentially is leverage, according to Alex Hormozy and his whole books on entrepreneurship. And so within the evergreen skill of speaking and also marketing and sales, you essentially construct a foundation from which you can launch yourself into the whole content creation game, building a product, building an audience, etc., etc. So networking is a derivative of speaking and also marketing and sales. And I know it's kind of like a rough approximation, but for the sake of consistency, but also simplicity, we'll just say that it's a derivative of speaking and marketing and sales. And so with the power of networking, what you have to realize is that you are essentially exchanging information, services, or value among individuals, groups, and institutions. And from my own years of networking and trying to build a career in the main job that I'm in right now, but then also on the side with my other creative project, and then hopefully this one as well, is that a lot of people approach networking in the wrong manner. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, let's say you're in your particular field, you're in the construction business, you attend a conference in Vegas with other industry leaders. You're not going to walk up, for example, if you're a complete newbie and you have let's say 2 years of skin in the game, you're not going to walk up to an industry leader that has 30 years of experience and be like, what can you do for me so that I can earn 7 figures a year in the construction business? That's not how networking works, but you'd be surprised because that's how a lot of people operate under the assumption that it does. Instead of doing that, what you need to be doing is to be asking yourself how you can provide value to other people. That is going to open up a lot of more doors for you in whatever field that you're going to be in, but also at the same time, how you just approach people just in general. So when you're talking about exchanging information, services, or value, typically you have to phrase the question in your mind, how can I provide value to this person that has 30 plus years of experience already? And how can I do so to the point where he's going to remember me in a sea of faces in a conference room or just a room in general? We'll cover three applications of networking to begin with and how you can use those to your advantage to stand out in, let's say, a crowd. So full disclaimer, there are many more applications of networking out there, but these are three applications that I have used in the past to either great or minor effect, and you can use them as well after you watch through this video and learn, even how to do it in the first place. So three applications again. The first are thank you cards. As dumb as that sounds, you would be surprised. A thank you card will get you far, which is very surprising. And I'll tell you a little story too. Number two is reaching out on LinkedIn via, let's say, DMing or just, cold messaging somebody. And then number three is probably the most obvious out of all of them is in-person meetings, because in an era where remote working is great, don't get me wrong, hybrid is also great as well, but if you want to stand out from the crowd, like, don't get me wrong, a virtual Teams meeting is great, or like a virtual coffee hour is great. But if you have the opportunity to do so, an in person meeting is going to leave a longer lasting impression on the person that you want to leave such an impact on. And then in the future can let you open some more doors, which I'll explain later. I know what you're thinking. Thank you cards as an application of networking. You'd be very surprised how people will often remember you, because think about it this way. We live in a very digital world, right? Like everything is like emails or texting or social media, etc. You rarely get anything physical in the mail aside from if like the IRS like wants to get more taxes from you, or if you're getting a bill. Typically anything that you get in the mail is often negative because it's associated with like a tax, or it's a bill, or your insurance company wants to get more out of you. These are all just random examples. But a thank you card is a positive spin on a physical item, which you would be surprised can get you really far. So let me tell you a quick story. So when I was graduating college, I was really desperate to find a job. I was trying to find anything and everything just to land on my feet, just to get more experience, et cetera, et cetera. So with one of my old advisors through college, I was networking enough to the point where I knew people here and there and stuff like that. And then they recommended a company to me that I eventually got one of my first jobs at. So what I ended up doing was, after I got the job, I ended up talking to another, it was like a recruiter or advisor, I can't remember at the time, but they suggested that as a follow-up to thank them for that particular, let's say, connection and stuff like that, write them a thank you card and then give that thank you card the next time you see them, or just mail it to them. So what I ended up doing was I mailed the thank you card to my old advisor that had essentially saved my butt, for lack of a better term, with trying to find a particular job by pointing me in the right direction. And then a year later, my old advisor had contacted me, even though I had a job to begin with, and recommended, let's say, like another job, which was pretty cool. So a thank you card from that story alone, even though the effects weren't necessarily immediate or quantifiable, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like a massive help for me like at the moment, because I was already working. But the point is that a thank you card will help people remember you at a later point in time. And what typically happens is like you'll have it lying around, you'll be doing spring cleaning or something like that, and then they'll find the thank you card and that will trigger a memory. That's the whole idea of giving someone like a physical card. They might throw it away, it doesn't matter, but the point is that they have that association in their mind. So a thank you card cost you like what, $1? Don't get like a fancy one, get one at Walmart or something. Write a quick note and thank people for a connection they provided, or a job that they recommended, or just thanking them for meeting them to begin with. And you would be surprised at how that could typically help you unexpectedly down the road, even years later. Reaching out via LinkedIn is the second application of networking that I wanted to cover like today as well. And so with the hand and stuff like that, as mysterious as that looks, it's essentially reaching out to people via LinkedIn, either through like DMing them or cold calling them if they have a phone number, or even cold messaging them. It goes by many different terms, but the point is the same, is that you're reaching out to strangers that you've never met or that you loosely know via LinkedIn. And for those of you who don't know what LinkedIn is, it's a professional networking platform that pretty much everyone that I know that has a career uses to begin with. So this one is met with some skepticism because it depends on your personality, and then it also depends on which industry that you're in. But typically, LinkedIn is a great way to connect with professionals across like a spectrum of like services and brands and industries, in order to get like some informational interviews, but then also just trying to figure out if like people are hiring, et cetera, et cetera. But the way that you reach out to people is typically like what matters. And so we can go to an example of what a LinkedIn profile looks like, and how the number of connections can like help you in the long run, and then also typically like how to reach out in the first place. So this is just an example of a LinkedIn recruiter profile. And so you'll find, you know, a ton of like different profiles out there, depending on like what their job is, depending on like what their title is, depending on where they are in their life, and depending on what industry they're in. But the point is the same. This is what typically a normal LinkedIn profile looks like. I don't know this person in particular. This was just a random picture that I found on the internet. And so take a look at the job title: Talent Acquisition Specialist, Recruiting, Human Resources. Their location is also specified, their contact info is there, and then also their number of connections like right below them as well. So typically, what you want to do when you're reaching out to people over LinkedIn is take a look at their job title, take a look at which sector that they're in, because obviously you need to do some research before you reach out randomly. Like, don't just reach out randomly and, ask for a job. That's like the number one thing that people hate when it comes to LinkedIn. Rather, message them on LinkedIn saying that, you met them through a friend of a friend, you met them at a particular conference, you just did a bunch of research and you found their information and you just want a quick informational interview or just even a quick coffee chat because you are a young professional and you're trying to find your way in the world just like they did. And you'd be surprised. People are often very open about like what they were doing like when they were your age or at their position in life. And if you can use that to your advantage, you can gain like, some knowledge firsthand in an industry that you may know nothing about. So typically, the number of connections will kind of tell you like where they are when it comes to like their career and also like how much of a networker themselves they are. Like typically if they have 500 plus, that they're pretty like well connected with people like across the board, or they just love to talk to people too. There's that as well. So you'll find a bunch of different profiles on LinkedIn, including like recruiters or professionals or self-employed people. Like it's used honestly for literally anything. And when it comes to networking, it is a very powerful tool that you can use to directly message people. I think it's, if you don't have the LinkedIn Premium, you can message them through like a note or something like that. I typically do that from time to time, but it's very useful because like if you can request, let's say like a coffee chat with like a recruiter or with a professional in a different industry, you can learn a lot even in like half an hour. So definitely I would recommend using LinkedIn as a platform to reach out to people. If you want, I can create a separate video about how to construct a good LinkedIn profile because I have one myself that I try to keep updated. And it's just a useful tool to have because like when you're applying for jobs or even when you're just trying to build your own like career, let's say as like a self-employed like freelancer or creator, people are going to look if you have a LinkedIn or not. Typically, if you don't have a LinkedIn, people regard that in a negative light because creating a profile on LinkedIn is free. And LinkedIn is kind of like the golden standard of seeing where you are in your career, if you're serious about your profession or whatever you're trying to do in life. So it's typically better to have a LinkedIn than not to have one. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be literally like in much less detail than this, but simply having one opens up a lot of doors. So I would highly recommend. So this is probably my favorite approach out of like all three. Although thank you cards is pretty up there as well. So in-person meetings. So whenever possible, I always advise people to schedule an in-person meeting, even if it is like super informal. It doesn't have to be like meeting someone at like, corporate headquarters or something like that. It could literally be like meeting someone for like a coffee for like 30 minutes to an hour. I have done that plenty of times over the course of like my professional career, but then just like in general with people that I find interesting in order to understand like what they do, where they come from, what their story is, etc. So an in-person meeting often leaves a better or just a longer lasting impression than typically like a virtual Teams meeting. Those work too, but at the same time, you're more likely to remember someone if like they reach out to you and they're just like, hey, my name is X. I have, my years of experience. I'm really trying to understand like how to get a job in this industry or sector. How do I do that? I would love to buy you a coffee if you're available in the city at this time. Would you mind? And then, if they don't have time, then make it virtual or schedule another time. But if they, offer you the option, typically take it. An in-person meeting, from what I've found over the course of like, I don't know, my professional career, but like also my, my other creative career that I'm trying to build and stuff at the same time, typically will lead to better results like down the line because people will just remember you more. It's like, oh, I remember that one kid that I met literally in that one city at that one time because it was face to face rather than through a computer screen. So, whenever possible, do an in person meeting. So, we covered three different forms of networking. The first are thank you cards, which are very unique in a very digital age. The second is DMing people over LinkedIn, which is the professional platform that I talked about before, that literally anyone that wants a career in anything should create an account and use. The third are in person meetings whenever possible. If you use at least one of these approaches when it comes to networking, I guarantee you that whatever industry that you're in, whatever career profession that you want to pursue, whatever you want to do with your life, if you use one of these three approaches, you'd be surprised at how people would remember you many, many, many years down the line. I've had people reach out to me years down the line after using one of these approaches, and I'm surprised, frankly, that they even remember me. But if you take the time to do certain things like thank you cards, in person meetings, reaching out to people over LinkedIn, people remember that. And then that'll help you with whatever you want to do, like down the line when it comes to finding a traditional career or building one of your own through a community around a hobby that you enjoy and then monetizing it as well. Follow and like for more, and then also subscribe to the YouTube channel The Life with Nate as I do more educational content like this. Have a great day or night wherever you are.